Good morning, everyone. Welcome to class this morning. If you're watching this live or if you're watching it on the recording later, I just want to thank you really quickly for watching. The first thing I want to talk about today is IT Advising Day, which is next week. It's 1 week from today, actually. And actually, let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. Oh, my zoom's too big. It's fine. We'll go with it. IT Advising Day is next Wednesday, 10 o'clock a.m., Paxaway 3200. That's the coding lab here on the top floor of Paxaway. Most of you have probably been in it at one point or another. If not, you should just come next week just to check it out. But IT Advising Day is a pretty important day. We do it every year. We have an IT Advising Day in the fall. And that's for all of our IT program students to kind of get them ready for the spring. We have several things that we do on IT Advising Day. Probably the biggest thing is that we have a look at your schedule. We see what you need. We see what you'd be best fit in for the spring. So we try to get you and your schedule ready for spring classes and go ahead and get you registered for spring. Now's the time to be thinking about spring. We usually have this advising day on or around the day when registrations opens up for spring. That way you can know what you need and immediately go out and register for it before it gets full. Another big thing that we do here is that we are, one of the more important things that you might want to do is just come check with us to make sure that the way you're seeing your progress in your degree and the way we have your progress in your degree on record matches up. Because you might be thinking, oh, I only have one semester left, or I only have these few classes left. But we want to make sure that what we have and what you think you need are the same. So that's another reason why we want to talk to everybody. Make sure you're taking the right stuff in the spring, making sure your degree progress is the same as what you think it is. And then another thing that we do at these advising days is we go ahead and get you applied for graduation. If you completed the IT Foundation certificate and haven't graduated with that yet, even if your associate's degree might not be completed for another year, if you've completed your foundation certificate or some other certificates, let's go ahead and get you registered for graduation for those certificates. That way you don't have to think about them and worry about them later. And you'll already have a credential that you can put on your resume, even if it's not your associate's degree quite yet. And some of you are probably graduating in the spring, so you can go ahead and apply now for graduation in the spring. So when you're making your plans in the spring, it's not just one more thing that you have to do, because you already have it done. So that's another thing that we do. And then, one of the biggest thing is that we're there. All of the IT instructors should be there. Some of the advisors from the college will be there. So if you want to ask us questions, or you want to, have a meeting with an advisor, everybody will be there. Now, we do see that this is next Wednesday at 10 o'clock a.m. So that means that next Wednesday at 10 o'clock a.m., I won't be available to do this live stream. So we're canceling our live stream for next week. No CTS 217 live stream. We might do 2 live streams the week after because I really had an idea for a special live stream that I might want to do with our next module. That would involve getting a special guest involved. And I kind of really want to do that, but because of advising day next week, I'm not going to live stream for this class next week. However, in lieu of the live stream next week, I would like for you all, if you're able, to show up, to come to Advising Day and take advantage of what we're offering on that day. If you're not able to come to Advising Day, if you're working or you have something else going on during that time, that's what the final note in this post here is for. To make sure that you contact one of us, one of the IT instructors, to schedule a meeting. And we can do it on Teams or, in person, either one, as soon as possible, so we can just kind of cover a lot of the same stuff with you that we would have covered at Advising Day. Make sure that you're on the same page as us with your degree progress. Make sure you're taking the right stuff in the spring so that you can graduate and be done with your program and, move on to that next phase, whatever that may be for you. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. I want as many of you all to take advantage of this as possible. So send me an email with your questions about Advising Day next week, or just show up and we can figure it out from there. One of the best, when it comes to Advising Day, the best thing you can do is just show up. And, we can take care of the rest for you. So with that being said, I also hope you all enjoyed your week off last week, your break week. Last year, around that time, would have been fall break here at the college. All the seated classes get a day get a day or a week where they don't have to come to class at some point during the semester. So I thought it was only fair to go ahead and work that fall break back in for you all for your online class and just give you the week off, since they're not doing a standard fall break this year. So this week we're picking right back up where we left off. The week before our break week, we were working with Module 4. Now we're in Module 5. And Module 5 is about common support problems. Common support problems. So this is going to kind of take what we talked about in Module 4 in terms of troubleshooting and push that into some more specific areas. We're not going to talk about how to fix specific support problems, because one, that's not a good use of our time here, and two, you've already covered a lot of that stuff. You've had your hardware classes, you've had your operating systems classes in which you actually get your hands on in fixing these common support problems. What this module is more about is awareness. Making you aware of the support problems that you will see the most often so that you can kind of know what to expect as, a computer support agent or a help desk technician. And it also gives you the ability to kind of apply what we looked at last time in Module 4 with your troubleshooting workflow to the most common support problems that you would see in this type of a role. So, when it comes to common end user problems, we can take all of these problems and boil them down to about 8 different categories. Hardware problems, software problems, network problems, user problems, security problems, documentation problems, vendor problems, and facilities and operation environment problems. Now, of these 8 problems, or of these 8 categories of problems, as a regular tier 1 frontline help desk technician, the ones you will see the most often are our user problems. These are the problems that you'll see the most often as a tier 1 help desk support agent. And we'll talk about what these are in just a few minutes. And really, a lot of the other problems, our hardware problems, our software problems, our network problems, these are problems that typically are what we find escalated in a help desk type of scenario. They're going to be on tier 2 support, tier 3 support. Tier 1 support, you might get some software problems. But they'd be more simple software problems like, oh, I don't know how to use X, instead of this isn't doing the right thing, this isn't doing what it's supposed to do. That would be a more level 2 or even level 3 type of problem. So by and large, when it comes to tier 1 tech support, the thing that, the job that we would most likely encounter, a lot of that would fall right here with user problems. So with that being said, we're going to kind of run through some hardware problems. We're going to kind of run through the other problems relatively quickly, and we'll end on the user problems for the purpose of this live stream today. All of these types of problems are covered in your text and your online material. So as you're working through different things, you get all of these different types of problems. But for the purpose of our live stream this morning, we're primarily going to cover the first 4, and we're going to spend most of our time with number 4, the user problems, because that's the one you're most likely to encounter. So we're classifying our problems. And we can classify our problems into these 8 primary categories. But then when we get into these categories, we can have sub-classifications of problems. So for example, in hardware, our hardware problems break down into 4 subcategories of hardware problems. Hardware installation problems, hardware compatibility problems, hardware configuration problems, and hardware malfunctions. Now, of these 4, one of the most often issues that you'll see is actually hardware configuration problems. Hardware configuration problems followed by hardware malfunctions. It's typically some kind of configuration on some kind of hardware that has been misconfigured that makes it incompatible. Especially when it comes to compatibility now with plug-and-play standards that we have in place. Compatibility is a much smaller issue. So what we see more often than not these days are either configuration problems or malfunctions. And malfunctions are actually more rare than you might think, especially in the tech support world. When you think about your own computer problems, it's very rare that your hard drive fails or that your RAM gets fried or something physical happens to your hardware. It's not very common. But we can look really quickly at these different types of problems. Hardware installation problems. These occur during the installation of new systems or the upgrades of existing systems. where basically you take either the wrong parts and try to put them in there, or you put the right parts in there wrong. You know, this could be like an incompatibility with the type of RAM for the motherboard, or an incompatibility for the type of processor for a motherboard. Or you take the right thing and you try to put it in there incorrectly. And these result in hardware installation problems. There's just something wrong with this new piece of hardware that you've put in. And, you know, it happens when you're putting in new systems. So when you're talking about putting in new systems, you're kind of pulling back a little bit and looking at the compatibility of the hardware to the greater system, to the greater environment in which the technology is being placed. And upgrades of existing systems makes a whole lot more sense. Like, we've all done that before, where we've opened up our computer and put new parts in it. And, you know, like if we accidentally buy DDR4 RAM when we need DDR3 RAM for this computer that's a little bit older, well, we end up with some issues. Hardware configuration problems result when hardware or software, because it could be, you know, part of your driver or hardware interface settings. So when we're talking about hardware configuration problems, that could also have something in the software that's causing the hardware to be misconfigured. You know, some kind of component settings are incorrect for a specific operating environment. Really, these configuration problems were a little more common than they used to be. And really, compatibility-wise, our plug-and-play, you know, standards fixed a lot of compatibility issues. But there are still a decent number of configuration issues. It's probably one of the more common things you'll see, like the example here, incorrect graphics card display settings. So your user gets to poke it around in their graphics card display settings, and all of a sudden it flashes the screen different colors, and now it won't come up. Or, you know, something happens and their display is looking all wonky now. And it's because they've applied an incorrect configuration to their graphics card based on their display and, you know, other parts of their system that they may or may not have. So it's an important thing to point out that, you know, configuration problems often occur. I've mentioned plug-and-play standards a lot. And these are plug-and-play standards. If you don't know what plug-and-play standards are, we're talking about industry-wide protocols. These are agreed-upon standards between different manufacturers, and they're followed by hardware and operating system vendors, just so that everything plays nicely together. You know, there was a time back in the day where this wasn't the case, and if you had a Mac, you had to buy certain Mac hardware to go with it. If you had a PC, you had to buy certain PC hardware to go with it. And that extended even into things like mice and keyboards and printers. You know, not everything was compatible across the board like it is nowadays. So they said, you know, hey, we'd make a whole lot more money and we'd have to stock a whole lot fewer products if we were somehow able to standardize this and make this better. And so that's what led to the adoption of plug-and-play standards. And, you know, nowadays, like, we get our operating system automatically loading appropriate drivers. And, you know, it's going to load a driver that's going to work with this device. It might not load the best driver to work with the device. Like, it's going to load something that's going to work. But the manufacturer might provide a little better driver that allows you to adjust software settings more to take maximum advantage of the new hardware's capabilities. So that's something to be on the lookout for as you're installing things. Just because you can get an automated driver installation and it'll let the hardware or peripheral work doesn't mean it's actually the best driver, because there could be other things that allow you to have more customization options for your system. Hardware malfunctions. Actual malfunctions account for a small percentage of hardware. You know, we've already said this. One of the ways that we can reduce the occurrence of hardware malfunctions is with a burn-in test on installation. With a burn-in test, we're going to run a computer for a 48 to 72 hour period, and during that period, we're going to operate it continuously, and we're going to put it under a fairly high strain. You know, essentially what we're doing here is we're taking whatever new hardware components that we've put into a system, and we're running them through their paces. And when we do this, when we really kind of put these new pieces of hardware under stress and see how they respond, this can bring issues to the surface. Marginal issues, just, like things that are like, oh, like it's broken, like it's not working properly, and temperature sensitive issues. Like it could seem to work fine under, a light load or even a normal load, but when things get too hot in the system, it could it could have a malfunction where it overheats easily and then crashes or breaks or does something that you don't want it to do. So these are all things to consider. When we're dealing with hardware components, there are certain components that are more likely to fail than others. Electromechanical devices, things that have these moving parts, are the most likely to fail. So your standard hard drive, optical drives, printers, peripherals like printers and scanners and that sort of thing. These are the things that are most likely to fail. These things that have these moving parts, and because those moving parts cause, result in friction, and friction wears down on parts, and over time that's just going to cause the degradation of your components. Now, less likely to fail are going to be your electronic components, the things with no moving parts that are just silicon chips and copper wires, and electrical impulses just travel through them. These are things like your processor and your RAM and solid state drives. But again, one of the things that we can do to help identify these components that are likely to fail is to run them through their paces, put them through a burn-in test, and see how they respond. Just as our hardware problems can be subdivided, our software problems can also be subdivided. And I'm not going to really spend any time on these software problem types. They're in your textbook material. So if you want to go spend more time reading about them, you can read about them there. Because we see the same types of problems: installation problems, compatibility problems, configuration problems, bugs, and performance problems. These are our subcategories of software problems. One of the things to note while we're on software, though, is version numbering. So we'll sit with version numbering for a minute here. If you've ever wondered why software is numbered the way it is, this is the reason. Because there is a standardized version numbering type of system here. And we have some different examples here. The first one being of just a brand new version. So the full release new version is a 0.0. So it's going to be 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, so on and so forth. Update releases get that 0.1, 0.2. And if there's a bug fix, then they extend it past that. So if there are no new features, just fix things that are kind of buggy, then it's 2.11 instead of 2.2. The only way you go up a number is if there's either a whole new release or new features that are being added to a current release. And then with a service pack, what you're doing is you're taking a collection of bug fixes and smaller updates, and you're just putting them together. So if I've gone through, like if I'm on version 2 with update 1, and maybe I've had like 4 or 5 little bug fix releases. So my version number is 2.16 or whatever. What I might want to do is take all of those updates and package them together and package them as the primary download on the website that I'm allowing people to get my software from. So in that case, I would take that collection of uploads and bug fix updates and bug fixes that I've put together and put into the primary installer and call that a service pack. So this would be 2.1 SP1 or service pack 1 that would be listed on my website. Network problems are a combination of hardware and software problems. And for those of you who have worked with networking applications, which should be all of you by now, you know, if you've taken Net 125, Net 126, 225, and 226, you've seen how networks rely on both hardware and software for operations. You know, whether they're on an end device or on a router or a switch or a server. You know, there are hardware issues and there are software issues involved. So our network problems occur on a network. You know, a network again being, you know, just to have a definition, the connection of 2 or more computing devices. And, you know, there's hardware issues and there's software issues that can interfere with that connection. The example here is using network monitoring software to detect bottlenecks on a network. And the bottleneck being caused by inadequate free space on a server's hard drive. So you've got a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B in these types of problems. So that brings me to the final thing that I want to talk about today, because I said it was the biggest thing, and that is user problems. This is the number one type, the number one category of problems that you will encounter as a tech support or help desk technician. And, you know, just like everything else, we can take these, subcategorize them into problems that are mistakes, misunderstandings, wrong products, inadequate training, or forgotten information. These are the things that you'll deal with the most often. So this is where we kind of bring back up the concept of empathy in this module. Because we see like these different problems. These are all things that are going to cause people issues. And they're going to be things that when they come in to you and ask you for help, they're going to be things that are obvious to you, right? Like, oh, you're not doing the right thing here. You're making a mistake. Or you have a misunderstanding of what's going on here, or you've just forgotten this. And so as far as all that goes, sure. What you need is some empathy with your user. You need to understand that people make mistakes. People get things wrong. So there needs to be some level of compassion in dealing with user problems, because user problems are one of the most highly occurring issues. And the idea that, you know, people are people and they need a little bit of compassion, need a little bit of empathy, need a little bit of help to try to get things fixed. Because, you know, as we talked about before with the whole knowledge worker situation, you know, not everybody is a computer expert. But in this day and age, everybody needs to use a computer, so we have to have some sort of decorum as we're dealing with these issues. User mistakes are probably one of your biggest percentage-wise, they're probably one of your biggest sources of support problems. And this is just things like I hit the wrong key. Maybe I hit like an F4 key or an F5 key by accident, and something got changed. I didn't realize I did it. But now I can't do what I wanted to do before because something's different now. Now, one of the big solutions to this is well-designed computer systems. In trying to make a good design for a computer system, one of the things that we have to consider is anticipating potential user mistakes, and then more than that, giving the user the ability to correct their errors. So in terms of what we would need to know, for somebody fixing these problems, we would kind of need to know what a lot of the less common keystrokes do. So we'd want to educate ourselves in a lot of the shortcut keys that are found in particular software. Or at least kind of have an understanding of how we go back and revert settings after they've been changed. But another thing that we might be asked to do is we might be asked to set up a system for someone else to use. Or come up with decisions on how a system should be created and designed to put into a certain environment. And so these are things that we have to consider as we're doing this. We have to consider the idea of giving the user the option to correct their mistakes after they've been made, as we're looking at these, at the possibility of user mistakes. User misunderstandings are when product features or limitations are not well understood. This happens a lot as well. For example, the user keeps hundreds of files in the top level documents folder or on their desktop. This is not how these systems were designed to work. Like our folder like the Explorer system was designed to have nested folders for the sorting of documents. And users in this case don't understand the role of subfolders, or they might not even know how to create subfolders. So what do we have to do in these instances of user misunderstanding? This is where education starts to play a big role. And so later on in the course, we're going to talk a lot about how we educate users and how we approach education and training. So we're starting to plant the seeds right now of the importance of user education. Because one of the things that we want to do is we want to not only send users home with their problem fixed, but we want to send users home with enough knowledge to where they may not have this problem again. In the process of fixing the problem, we also need to be educating our users about what caused the problem and things that they can do to mitigate or solve it themselves. Because one, that's going to save us some time in the future because we're not going to have the same problem recurring over and over and over again. And two, that's going to make the user feel more confident in their computer use now that they understand something that they previously misunderstood. And it's going to help build our relationship with the client or with our users. So that's something that's absolutely critical. Wrong products is another thing. Might have even this is something that happens to us all. This is something that might have even happened to you. You purchase something and it turns out not to be what you thought it was or how you thought it would work. And so it doesn't accomplish the task that you thought it would accomplish. And this is, again, an instance where education helps. We want to try to make sure that our users understand the compatibilities and limitations of different hardwares and softwares that they're looking to purchase. And we want to understand or help them try to make a good decision and give them alternates if alternates are present. That's one of the reasons why, we, like a couple weeks ago, you did that suggesting software lab where, you tried to suggest a help desk software to me as your hypothetical boss. And so, in one instance, that was trying to get you to do some research on some different types of help desk software that were out there, see what's out there, and get an understanding of generally how help desk softwares work. But two, it helps us out in these sorts of instances where we are trying to be able to educate people in order to help them to make a decision about purchasing the right products and purchasing products that are going to work for them. We want to make sure that people have an understanding of the compatibilities and the limitations of a certain software package. And if there are alternatives to that software package that do similar things, but that might have slightly different features, we want to be able to tell our user about those as well. This is, again, about keeping our user well informed, about building that relationship and that trust with our user, and ultimately building that user's confidence in them knowing that they have the correct product that's going to allow them to do what they need to do with their software. Inadequate training or failure to read documentation. Again, this is an education issue. You don't know what you don't know, right? That's one of the big things here, is that you don't know what you don't know. And just like you don't know what you don't know, nobody else does either. Now, but this is like a really common behavior that people have. It's human nature. We've given it a name. We call it quick start behavior. It's this tendency to just kind of take the manual and throw it out and say, haha, no worries. I know what I'm doing. I can do this. I don't have to read this manual. I can figure it out. It'll be fine. If you've ever tried to put together some IKEA furniture or something like that, and where you've just thrown the manual out and you think, I can wing it, you realize pretty quickly that you're probably not fine. You probably shouldn't decided to have tried to wing it. But that's the sort of mentality that we're bringing into this here. But we're bringing it into stuff that we're aware of that other people might not be. And when we have this sort of mentality, that's going to waste time, that's going to waste effort, that's going to waste productivity. And it could lead to bigger problems. Finally today, I want to sit with this one. This is where I want to end, because this is going to be 99.999% of the problems that you encounter as a tier 1 help desk technician. Forgotten information. If you don't believe me, you can go by and ask whoever's sitting at the help desk in the library here at Cleveland Community College what kind of tickets they deal with the most often. They will tell you something in this category. Forgotten usernames, forgotten passwords, forgotten email addresses, forgotten PIN numbers, forgotten operating procedures, where I've been told before, but now I only do this once every 6 months or so I've forgotten. Every semester at the start of the semester, the help desk here at Cleveland Community College is swamped with requests for password resets because everybody's forgotten their password from the previous semester. So one of the things that we have here as potential solutions, potential things that you can do, is one, to create an information repository for your users, whether it's printed or available online. These sorts of reference sheets. Because when we're looking at like forgotten operating procedures, like these are things that they're the same, they're consistent. They just might only do them once every 3 months, 6 months, annually, whatever. And so between one time and the next time, I've just forgotten some of the little things about what I'm supposed to do. But if I know that I can, but if you as a help desk technician can just say, oh, well, here are the instructions for that, and hand them a reference sheet or direct them to a website where you have all of these reference sheets for this particular issue, then not only do they have the knowledge of how to complete that issue this particular time, but they also have the knowledge of where to go back and get those instructions again if they need to. So that's pretty good. Another thing here, just for cybersecurity wise, that we have here is encouraging users to write down a reminder of their passwords instead of the passwords themselves. It's sort of an easy way to kind of help your users practice some good cybersecurity. Shoulder surfing and just snooping around for information is one of the causes of password theft. And having your password written down and displayed out in the open makes it likely to get stolen and used by someone who you wouldn't want having it. So making sure we educate our users not only in how to have a good password, but how to keep that password safe and secure is also incredibly important. So that's where we'll stop for the live stream today. I want to thank you for coming. I'll hang out in the chat for just a few moments as we end here, just in case anybody who is live with me today has a question or two. A couple reminders as we finish up today. One, make sure you get the assignments for module 4 or 5 rather. Get the module 5 assignments here turned in by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Another one is next Wednesday, no live stream. Instead, come to IT Advising Day. IT Advising Day next Wednesday, October 14th, 10 o'clock a.m., Paxoy room 3200. That's the top floor coding lab. You'll know it by the big Yeti on the wall. Come get ready for next semester, because we want to see you all back in the spring. We want to see you all finishing your degrees, diplomas, or certificates and meeting your goals. So no live stream next week. Come to Advising Day instead. Get Module 5 assignments done by 11:59 this Sunday. If you have any questions, please email me, contact me, let me know, and I will do my best to answer any question that you have. But that's all that I have for this week. Again, I'm going to hang out in chat for just a minute or two to take questions, but that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.